is the level of adoration and reverence. This is a scary word, but I feel like sometimes pastors are idolized in our culture here.
Sure.
And when that happens, it can make church feel more fulfilling than the home.
That's true.
So what happens is that rather when you're spending time with your family, phone call comes from the church, you quickly start stealing away time from family to serve church people. And so we end up sacrificing our family on the altar of ministry.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Nigerian Pastors Podcast. My name is Segun Aiyegbusi, and I'm your host. And welcome to season 2. We got picked up, for a second season. Woo. Absolutely. And when I say picked up, I mean we decided to pick ourselves up and start a second season. Well, man, we're glad you're here. So Nigerian Pastors Podcast is the media ministry of the Gathering Faith Leadership Network. We are a pastoral training ministry. We're located in the city of Jos in the beautiful Plateau State here in Nigeria. And our vision as a ministry is to develop emotionally and spiritually healthy pastors who lead thriving churches. Amen. And so we're back here at season 2, which implies we had season 1. So if you were with us in season 1, welcome. If you were not, well, welcome anyway. So in season 1, a couple of things are different this season. In season 1, our podcast focused mostly on what I would describe as theology proper. So I focused on things like eschatology and bibliology and several ologies, pneumatology, and all kinds of different things. This season, I'm going to focus more on practical theology. In other words, we're going to talk more this season about the life of a pastor and things that influence and impact the life of a pastor, his family, and his children. Secondly, in season 1, I was the solo preacher. I was the solo teacher and host. Well, this season, I brought out a special guest. Joining me in this season, I have a co-host, Reverend Joshua Sati is going to be joining us. What's up, bro?
Fine. Thank you so much. I'm really, really glad to be here, Segun.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here, man. This is exciting. I love not doing this alone, right? So Reverend Joshua actually works with us here at the Gathering Faith. He's our director of spiritual care. So tell them a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, what you like.
Well, hello once again. My name is Reverend Joshua Sati. I have been a pastor for the past 17, 18 years.
Yes, sir.
And I have this calling since when I was a teenager, and so I didn't really drift, so far, and I went straight into it. And so I went to study at Ekwa Theological Seminary, where I got my BA in pastoral theology, after which I took some time to work as a pastor in different churches with the Evangelical Church Winning All. And I've had the chance to pastor in 3 or 4 different churches. And that's because the policy is you pastor for a time and then you are moved to another.
So you didn't get kicked out of any churches?
No, I didn't get kicked out of any church. Nice. And afterward, I also went back to get my master's degree in theological studies. And as it is right now, I am just grateful to God for all these degrees that I have gotten, because it has been helpful for me in this ministry. I also have an MA in ethics and philosophy.
You've studied quite a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
I did that one for fun.
Look at that, man. This guy knows stuff. Pastor Joshua knows stuff. He's here. So if you have any difficult theological questions, send your emails to him. He'll help you handle that.
Thank God for it, actually.
Well, dude, I'm glad to have you on board. Like I said, I was a pastor in New Jersey for several years, 15 plus years, and transitioned here to Nigeria. And we focus as a ministry on training pastors. So let's jump right into today's episode, right? Today, we're going to be discussing what no one tells you before you become a pastor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You've done this, 15 plus years, right?
Yeah,
I've been in it for just as long, maybe a little longer. And so we're going to talk about what no one tells you before you become a pastor. And there's actually 3 groups of people I think today's episode speaks to. The first first group of people are those young men who are, those young guys who are considering, or older guys, right, who are considering going into pastoral ministry, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, and I've noticed this, that when you look at being a pastor from the outside, especially if according, by the world standard, you have a large church, people sort of look at it like, man, this is easy and fun.
Yeah,
I'd love to do this, but it's a lot of work. And so if you are thinking about pastoral ministry, today's episode is going to be for you. The second group of people we're talking to are those of you who are already pastors, right? You've been doing this. I think as Pastor Joshua and I talk, you're going to identify with a lot of what we're talking about, right? You'll probably be encouraged because you're going to find out that you're not the only one going through this. And then the third group of people are the congregation members. I think today's episode will help you understand a little more what your pastor is going through, how to pray for him and his family.
And just be supportive.
Absolutely.
Look, it's not easy. It's not just.
It really isn't.
It's not a walk in the park.
Who was it? Someone said that if you could do anything other than being a pastor, please do it. It's a lot of work. So, all right, let's jump right in. 10 things no one tells you about being. So let me start with you. What's one thing you would say?
So the first thing I have here is that you will struggle with critics even when you do well in ministry. Sometimes there's this, I don't know whether to call it a myth. You feel like, hey, if I am doing well, no one is going to criticize me.
It's all going to be nice and easy.
But that is not the case. Criticism is inevitable when it comes to ministry. You will find critics. And so the earlier, the better you begin to learn how to deal with criticisms, the better.
Come into ministry knowing this is part of the package.
Sure. It is part of the package, as a matter of fact.
It really is.
Yeah, because like I said, you cannot avoid being criticized for obvious reasons, that we are working with broken people and we ourselves are broken. So definitely there's room for things that will make people criticize you. It's either you're being misunderstood or you misunderstand others. So
some of the criticism will be because of something you did wrong. Some of it will be something you didn't do wrong. Some of it will be you're not even aware you've done something wrong. What was that quote you and I were talking about? Aristotle, right? Aristotle says what? That
if you do not want to be criticized, say nothing, do nothing, and be nothing.
Right? Just be quiet. That's the only way.
And of course, if you will be a pastor, you've got to say something, you've got to do something, and you've got to be something. So you can't avoid criticism.
Absolutely. Young pastors, be aware of that. And so in many respects, if you are being criticized, I think we talked about this even before this recording, that first of all, take encouragement in the fact that biblically, men of God throughout history, not only in church history, but in biblical history, have faced criticism, right? Moses, right? Aaron and Miriam were critiquing his leadership.
And the people,
right? Are you the only one God's called? Right?
David,
Paul. We can literally just go down the list, right? And so I think come into ministry knowing that that's very much a real possibility. Not only when you do things wrong, but when you do things right.
It's not just men of God. God himself was criticized by Satan through the serpent. When he was conversing with Eve, he made God looked like some liar and some overindulging person. Did God really say?
That's good.
So think about it. If God himself is, was criticized, who are you?
Let's get ready for that.
Sure.
So that's good.
Sure.
Okay, so no, it's in a moment. So So the second thing I would say no one tells you before you come into ministry is that if you don't guard your heart, you will struggle with jealousy in ministry, right? As a pastor, you will struggle with that, right? Like I think many pastors come into ministry with pure motives, right? We want to serve God, we want to serve people. But one of the things that you'll observe is that, first of all, ministry takes time to grow, and it's very easy to pour all your heart into your church, into your ministry.
That's true.
And notice it's not growing. But then you look at other people who are not preaching the Bible as much as you are. All of a sudden, their churches are growing, right? They're having more people. And so your heart starts to feel a little unsettled. And so that's one of the things we talk about, right? Like you have to guard against that.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Very important. I mean, the fact that you are a called pastor doesn't make you immune to jealousy.
Yeah.
I mean, you carry that baggage into the pastoral ministry. So you need to guard your heart.
You need to guard your heart.
Oh, sure.
Second Timothy chapter 4, verse 5, we would say is a good counter, how do I put this? It's a good remedy to deal with jealousy, right? So Second Timothy chapter 4, verse 5, Paul says, as for you, Paul is speaking to a younger pastor named Timothy. He says, as for you, be sober-minded, endure suffering, do the work of an evangelist. And here's the part. He says, fulfill your ministry. And that's important. We're talking about that's important because oftentimes what causes jealousy is when we start to focus on other people's ministry who seem to be doing better than ours, as opposed to running at the same pace. The fact of the matter is that God does not call us all to the same work. Right? And we've said this before, that it's very possible that for some pastors over the course of your lifetime in ministry, God may very well say, I need you to faithfully shepherd only this 100 people. And you're looking at the guy with 1,000 and 5,000, we're like, oh, they're not doing the right. And so Paul's teaching here is fulfill your ministry. Don't be so distracted by someone else's ministry that you end up missing the race. And so,
because we all have our unique calling. Everybody is being called to a unique, ministry. So we need to learn to be content. I mean, again, to add to the passages, the passage you just read in Philippians chapter 4, Paul talked about the fact that he said, I learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. Now, contentment is not inherent. It's something you have to build.
It doesn't come naturally.
You know. So, as pastors, we just have to guard our hearts, and we need to, build these attitudes that will help us, to stay away from all this negativity, jealousy, and envy, and all of this.
That's real, man. You speak to some seasoned pastors who are a little more mature, they'll tell you it was a very real issue. All right, so that's number 2. What else do you have?
So number 2, if you don't stay focused in ministry, you may eventually become a people approval motivated pastor.
We've got a people approval motivated pastor.
The role of being a pastor can be so overwhelming. And sometimes, you get carried away and you just start drowning into trying to get approval from people rather than just focused on God, who is the one who, just God's, approval, so to say. So, and if care is not taken, you will find yourself just doing things and looking out for
to win people's approval.
And that's
dangerous.
It is. It's dangerous.
That's very dangerous.
It's not healthy. It can really get you into trouble because when you begin to do things for people to see, to applaud you, you will miss the Spirit's leadership, or when the Spirit is leading you.
Right. You think about that. Like if you're in a congregation that has 100 people, all 100 of them have a specific idea of how they think you should do ministry. And so if you're driven by a desire to please people, that can be, and so we talk about the fact that, part of identifying if this is the issue is did you come into ministry like do you get do you feel a sense of value only when people applaud you, or can you faithfully serve the Lord and serve the church even if no one is applauding you? Because if you can't, you might slip into this tendency to want to do things to win people's approval. And like we said, in ministry, nothing will distract you faster from the Lord's calling than looking for people's approval.
And because naturally we are social beings. So there's this tendency that we always want to feel among or feel belong and all of that. So these are some of the things that kind of get us into this, this mess.
Hi, Pastor Segun, Aiyegbusi here. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Nigerian Pastors Podcast. It's our prayer that these episodes have been spiritually uplifting for you and encouraging to your ministry and family. Our vision continues to be the development of emotionally and spiritually healthy pastors and ministry leaders who are leading thriving churches and ministries. So we want to invite you to stay connected to us through our social media pages where we regularly update and upload our training content and upcoming events. So you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, or on YouTube at The Gathering Faith Leadership Network. We'd love to connect with you online.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Let's assume that there's a pastor listening now and he's already battling, he's struggling with this approval motivated leadership. How can he come back? I almost give the answer away, but at least what I'm thinking, I don't know if there's one answer. How can he break free from that?
Well, I think one of the things is for you to just set boundaries, all right?
Okay.
Healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And then learn to celebrate your strengths, all right?
Yeah.
I mean, learn to appreciate the strength that God has given to you. And, just appreciate it. Don't
value your gifting.
Value your giftings.
Yeah.
Don't allow other people's opinion, to kind of determine the values that you have. Yeah. Because people don't really have the ultimate, instrument to measure your self-worth or your value. So you should try to just appreciate what God has given to you.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. One of my mentors, Rob Reamer, he's written a book on soul care that's been huge in my life. But he says this, he says that, it's part of how we break free from this people-pleasing tendency is we need to understand that the issue of your value has already been settled at the cross.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, so we're trying to earn, like, if we're trying to, like, God the Father already gives us his approval because we've trusted in his son, Jesus Christ. And so part of seeking approval of others may be because we haven't yet received the approval of the Father.
That's true.
And so once we take care of the Father issue and we sit on the fact that despite my brokenness, despite my sinfulness, I'm still loved by Father by the Father because I'm trusting in Christ. I feel like I'm teaching. Let me pull back. It's a podcast. It's not a sermon, right? But let me just say this: the issue of your value has been settled at the cross. The more you embrace this truth, the less you find that you need to please others.
That's true. And then sometimes the problem could be from the way you were being, raised, parental influence.
Yeah.
Because if you grow up in a family where parents give you love conditionally, like only when you do something good, the tendency is that you will go with this and it will always, remain like a practice or a culture for you. So that you need to also do some kind of self-reflection.
Did you come into ministry with some daddy issues? Yeah, seriously, that stuff will impact you. We've talked about this, we talked about the perfect example of the Father affirming Jesus Christ, the Son, at the baptism, right?
Yes.
Jesus comes to be baptized. He's dipped in the water by John the Baptist. When he comes out, Scripture says the voice of the Father was there, the Son is present, the Spirit is there, and God says to the Son, "This is my Son, whom I love." With whom I'm well. I mean, that is the ultimate approval right there. And what's most fascinating about that passage is the fact that Jesus hasn't done any work yet. Right? You just mentioned that most of us fathers give our children approval when they excel. But yet we find that the Father is demonstrating for us what true approval. So I'm saying this because if you're a pastor and you have children, it might be helpful to understand that part of how we help our children develop this sense of personhood is affirming them because God gave them to us as gifts.
That's true.
All right, I've slipped into teaching. I gotta guard against that. All right.
But good model to work with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So number 4, what no one tells you about being a pastor is this. You will struggle, or you may struggle to find balance between family time and church ministry, right? Like if you don't because ministry can be addictive. We've talked about this, that if you are living for the approval of the crowd, right? If you're going, if you're just constantly serving the church, because in church, people are always, yes, at least here in Nigeria, I think I've said this, where I don't think I've seen the level of, dare I say, worship, the level of, it's not even respect, adoration that pastors receive here in Nigeria. I've never seen that anywhere else. You go to some churches and it's, my pastor this, I can't do this to my pastor.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was invited when we transitioned to Nigeria, I was invited to speak at a church. And when I showed up at the church, they met me at my car. There were some people who came and carried my Bible.
Oh, wow.
They escorted me to one private section. I mean, I thought I was a celebrity. And for the first few moments, I was enjoying it. Then it started to get weird because they escorted me to the front of the stage. I had a special bottle, and then people would, afterwards. In fact, they were taking my. It was my turn to go and preach, and someone grabbed my Bible, and I was like, no, bring my Bible back. Apparently, they were escorting me, and I'm like, I don't need you to escort me to the stage. I can walk on my own, and so I say that to say that what I've observed here in Nigeria is the level of adoration and reverence this is a scary word, but I feel like sometimes pastors are idolized in our culture here.
Sure.
And when that happens, it can make church feel more fulfilling than the home.
That's true.
So what happens is that rather when you're spending time with your family, phone call comes from the church, you quickly start stealing away time from family to serve church people. And so we end up sacrificing our family on the altar of ministry.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And sometimes again, what happens is that we, expectations, we feel like people expect us to always be.
Yeah.
All right. So that is one thing that also traps us, in the church, and
we can't say no.
We can't say no because we perceive that people will always want you to be this and this and this. So your members' expectations that your perceived expectations.
Yeah, because they might actually not have that. It's just that we feel like they feel like we need to be there all the time.
Yeah. So that's actually something that can really take you off from having your family time.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we would recommend, and we talk about this, shameless plug, we talk about this in one of our soul care seminars. We offer a 3-day soul care seminar at the Gathering Faith here in the city of Jos, and a 12-week semester we're actually going to be launching this year. One of the things we talk about is reprioritizing your family as a pastor, right?
Sure.
Because part of what happens, what we've observed, and this is not just us speculating, we've trained, and I'm not even saying this to brag, but in the last year in 2023, we trained about 1,100 pastors. And one of the things we found out in interacting with pastors is that many times pastors put they put ministry first, God second, and family third.
That's true.
And we often talk about, well, first of all, your relationship with the Father should always be first, then your family, then ministry.
That's true.
Right? And so we talk about, and part of reprioritizing your family is understanding what your wife's love language is, right? So in other words, when you spend time with family, let it be quality time. Yes, there will be seasons when ministry is busy and you have to be there.
That's true.
But the idea is that you intentionally carve out time not only to be with family, but quality. So what are your children's love languages? What's your wife loves love language? Even if it's an hour you have during your busy season, man, give that time to them.
Very important. You need to just deliberately set up schedule and have family time in that schedule.
Yeah.
And don't play with that. People will not die.
Yeah,
just
turn your phone off when you're with your families, right?
Just relax. And again, just to buttress the fact that, look, we need to be with our families.
Yeah.
Jesus said, I will build my church, but he never said, I will build your family.
Yeah.
He will.
Yes, he will.
But he is counting on you because that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
It is the responsibility of the father to provide and do all that. Do all, meet the needs of the family. So Jesus will always build his church, all right? So let him build his church, and you should also take up your own responsibility.
Yeah, and that thought that our families, in many respects, are our first congregation as pastors, right?
Yes,
because if there's chaos within my personal family, it will create a ripple effect in the church.
Definitely.
Right, and many times, once again, we've dealt with this where pastors are busy doing ministry, but the family's falling apart.
Sure.
And actually, it might be worth, if that's your case, it might be worth taking a short break from ministry to serve your family, love your family, because listen, your ministry will flow out of whatever is happening at home.
Absolutely.
So, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The denomination I served with, if there's chaos in your family, you will literally be asked to step aside.
Yeah, and that's healthy. And it's not kicking them out. It's just saying, take a break, get this right.
Get this right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because family is really, really important when it comes to, the church ministry, because it's an overflow of what happens in the home that, goes into the church, for you as a leader.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, what else do you have for us?
Okay, so I have here, pay attention to your wife because your ministry may be killing her.
Ooh,
I mean, I mean, I say this out of experience and out of what I have seen going on. Pastors, we need to pay attention to our wives. I mean, special attention. Thank God we've just finished talking about, how to, strike the balance between home and ministry. Our wives need special attention. They are dying in silence. And the truth is sometimes they don't open up because they feel like if they open up, it will look as if they are not being supportive. But to be honest, some pastors' wives are just dying in silence because they are struggling to find their true identity. Because the ministry work is overwhelming and it covers them. They are so buried into it.
They get absorbed into it.
They get absorbed into it, and they are struggling to even define who they really are. Because God also have called them into a unique and a peculiar ministry. They need to identify, and He's going to hold them responsible. So we need to be able to, strike this balance and pay this attention. And then sometimes our wives can feel isolated. They can't fit in to just mingle with the congregant
within your church.
So and they're just there all alone. They don't have friends because somehow there's this tension between
We've actually had in our pastors training, because part of what we not only train pastors, but we also do trainings for pastor's wife here in Jos. And we've actually had a pastor's wife say that, in a new church, she's like, I don't think the church members know my name because some people just refer to me as pastor's wife. Right. So sometimes we've known pastor's wife who expressed that they were feeling lonely in their husband's church. And so this is not to blame pastors, but simply to encourage us pastors to say, you might want to check in with your wife.
Exactly.
Right? Like, how, ask her honest opinion. Like, how are you doing? Is my ministry ministering to your heart? Is it serving you?
I mean, these are questions that will really help. And you'll be surprised the kind of things, the feedback you're going to get.
We should say this, that if you're going to ask your wife that question, you probably should be ready and open to hear whatever she says. I mean, full disclosure, there was a season in my marriage where my wife was like, she only went to church because I worked there. Right? She was, and it wasn't anything with the church. Part of it was there were some issues with me that I wasn't addressing with her. And so it's like she wasn't getting fulfilled. And I remember when I was talking with her about church and she said, babe, you know that I'm really feeling empty inside. And I just assumed that, hey, she's enjoying my sermons and my ministry. And when she actually brought that up, I had to figure out, okay, what do I need to change in my schedule, in the way I relate to her so that she feels life-giving. So I appreciate all we're saying. And what we want to encourage is to simply say, have an honest conversation with your wife. If your wife is happy, there's nothing great. But it may be helpful if you've been doing ministry for a long time to just pause and check in with her. And take her out on a date.
I mean,
right?
Of course.
Take her wife out on a date. What does she like to do? That has so much value, right?
Yeah, it does.
I remember one of the most fun things I think I did. Like, so when we were in pastors on staff in New Jersey, there's a particular restaurant that my wife liked, right? And so oftentimes I would build into my schedule where middle of the day, because she was a stay-at-home mom at the time, I would actually go to that restaurant, buy some food, and bring it home for a during lunch. And man, that infused our marriage with so much passion and so much joy, because I spoke her love language, which was quality time. So
very important. Pastors, talk to your wife. I mean, don't always talk about ministry. And to be honest, sometimes when you even share some of your struggles, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but also be careful, because women will absorb it double.
That's good. So I'm going to throw a question that's not on our list. So let me ask you this. How do you find that balance between what you a pastor, you're having beef in church, right? How much of that would you say you should share with your wife as a pastor?
I think it depends on her nature. You need to study your wife to know how much she can take. And go and work with her limits. That's the best way I can describe it.
No, that's good. I asked that question because we faced that question with our training, right? Because the question was, if I'm sharing with my wife everything that's upsetting me at church, The problem is I may heal from it, but because my wife carried this, so somebody might have said something about me and my family, and I'm upset. I share it with my wife, but then I don't know, for whatever reason, I let it go a week later. But my wife is still carrying that now. So, and it's not to say don't tell her things, but be discerning.
Yeah, be discerning.
Was your point? Be discerning what to share. Oh, that's
Very
good.
important.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, let me do one more. I don't know how much time we have, but let me do one more.
Right.
And it's this: that what no one tells you before you become, it's that you will experience a betrayal, a deep hurt, or a disappointment that may make you consider quitting the ministry.
Yes.
Whew. Right. And I always, whenever I talk about this, I always make the point that, listen, we're not in heaven yet. We've not been sanctified. I'm sorry, we've not been glorified yet.
Yes.
We're still being sanctified, which means that people who bear the name of Jesus Christ will sometimes act like they don't belong to Jesus. Right. Like, I mean, some of the betrayal and disappointment that you experience in ministry will be because of something you did or something you said wrong. Some of it will be because of something you said or did that was misunderstood.
Yes.
Some of it will be because of some of it will be in response to something you never said or you never did. Some of it will be because a group of influential people want to remove you.
Yes.
And then some of it will be because of something you did or said wrong, but you're not even aware that you did or said something wrong, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like, it can come from anywhere, right?
Yeah. And of course, like you said, we are working with broken people. It could also come out of envy and jealousy. Someone would just be jealous and envious of you and would just set you up.
Yeah.
And then it's there.
Yeah, like sometimes sometimes people's unhealthy response to us or betrayal may not be because of something in our lives. It may be because of a brokenness in their lives.
That's true.
And so part of, right, I mean, Jesus Christ was betrayed by one of his core followers, right?
That's true.
And so, you know, this ministry, they really shouldn't call it pastoral ministry. They should call it ministry of suffering. I mean, there's blessing and there's joy, but and I know we're focusing on the negative things, right? Because listen, I think we're telling you things that you may not know, all right? The other things you may see, but absolutely, like understand that sometimes those that you confide in may violate that trust. And so because once again, in our training, a lot of soul care we do for pastors here in Nigeria is for pastors who have been through this, right? People who come to us and say, I gave my life to this church. I gave my life to these elders, yet they backstabbed me. And so we're saying on the one hand, be aware that it's coming.
Yes.
But so I'm going to throw something out at you, right? So we're going to turn this into an interview of pastors. So what do you do, right? You're a church member. You've been deeply wounded. You're carrying some deep hurts. Give us one or two things. How do you?
Well, I think
you heal from that.
I think you just mentioned one, that don't be expectant. Not that, but don't let it surprise you.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Know that this thing can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even the first thing to do. Know that, okay, this can actually happen within this setting. So it doesn't shock you.
Sure.
Beyond
reality
repair.
check. Yeah.
And then secondly, I think just like physical wounds, if you are wounded in this way, you need to maybe sometimes even take a break, take some time off and deal with that. All right. Yeah. But that shouldn't kill or cripple you completely. Sure. Just know that it's one of those things that you have to deal with. All right. So get help, if necessary, but there's nothing wrong in even taking a break from ministry. From ministry, depending on the intensity of the hurt or whatever it is, because it's very important.
And this actually ties. Am I going next or you're going next?
Yeah, I'm going next.
I was going to say, because this ties into the next point I was going to say, which is part of healing process is also confiding in other godly pastors, like finding pastors who love Jesus, who care for you. Sometimes trying to run this race alone can make those hurts feel a lot more. But when you spend time with other pastors and share those stories, you might find encouragement.
Yeah, keep accountability group. I mean, people that love you and will never betray you. And always find get support from such a group. It's very helpful. All
right, let's go yours, and then we'll.
Okay. All right, our time is really going. So let me take this one. Untreated emotional wounds from your past shapes your leadership disposition in ministry. Okay. So this is just to say that, hey, even, since we're talking about, hurt in the ministry, but even hurts that you might have, will I say acquired, before you go into ministry, can be, can shapen your ministry if it is not treated. Yeah. Because, for instance, if you had like a heartbreak, a very hurting, heartbreak, the breakfast we're talking about.
I don't think we can share that. We can share that on video.
In relationship. The truth is, when you come into ministry, such things can impair your decision making sometimes, especially when you have to deal with matters around the same situation, that have caused you such pain.
What's that saying that hurt people hurt people? Right? Like
that's true.
People who have been wounded. And I think part of that is being aware of what are triggers for you? What are some words? What are some people that are triggers for you? Like the more you understand those, the less the more you understand it and work through that, right? Right? Because for all of us have different triggers. Some of us are triggered by people who are triggered by introverts. You tell someone they don't talk back, or we're triggered by people who are confronted. Like, what is it that triggers you? The more it might be indicative of a wound that's not yet addressed that followed you into ministry.
True.
Absolutely.
Because as a leader, you need to have a very good decision-making skills. You need to have a very good relational skills. And you also need to have a very good communication skills. And to be honest, sometimes a wound or a hurt in the from the past can impair these things, because relationship is very important. You may not learn to trust people. You may have some kind of limit or some
vows you've made that keep you from
keep you away from just opening up and trusting people as a pastor. And so this is very
absolutely no, I love it. Crucial. I love it. So it seemed like, we're going to wrap things up, but it seems like, as I'm thinking about it, a lot of our discussion, at least for this, because we have like 4 or 5 more, it seems like a lot of what we discussed today has to do with being aware of the condition of your heart, right? That's why scripture talks about guard your heart.
That's true.
Above all else, because out of it flow the issues of life, right?
True.
For many of us pastors, you may find that a lot of what you are struggling with out there in ministry may actually be an issue that's unsettled in your own heart, right? That's why scripture says, guard your heart, guard this thing above all else, because out of it flows the issues of ministry. So, all right, I think, man, we're going to wrap up today's episode. And man, I think we have about 12 episodes scheduled for this season. We may have some guests as we go along, but that's pretty much it for today. We'll continue this discussion in the next episode. But man, I do want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, or Pastor Joshua. He's going to be here all season long, right? It's going to be our close this season. It's going to be fun, man. We got some great things we're going to discuss. We're talking not only about things no one tells you about ministry. We're going to talk about pastors' wives. We've already hinted at that. We'll talk about your relationship with your kids, issues that pastors' kids face. We'll talk about even your preaching ministry. I mean, we got a lot we're going to cover. So we're looking forward to you joining us this season. Thank you so much for listening. I want to encourage you, would you consider sharing our podcast, whatever platform you're listening to this on? Share it with social media, YouTube, wherever you're listening. Share this with some other pastors. Let them be encouraged by it. And looking forward to have you join us for the rest of the season. God bless you.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you.